Hey guys, how are you?
Pretty good. Okay.
You doing okay?
I'm sick.
You're sick? I'm so sorry. So I'm so glad to see you guys back today, that y'all came back and wanted to continue doing the group. Eldriana, how has your week been?
Bad. I made my bed because I'm so sick. I
You're so
feel like I
sick.
cannot do anything, so I didn't do much.
What's going on with you?
I think I have a cold.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Just make sure that the medications that you're taking are appropriate for not being in a being an addict and not being in addiction.
I'm not taking anything
So,
right now.
okay. But I mean, there are things that you can take.
Oh,
so-
I don't want to.
Okay. Well,
But thank you.
that's awesome. How are you doing, Rachel?
I'm doing okay. It's been a really good week. I think that I felt really energized, and I was able to spend a lot of time with my family.
That's great.
My family that I don't see a lot, and so I don't know. I just same.
That's great. About you, Katie?
I also spent a lot of time with family that I don't see often, but instead of making me feel great, it really wore me down.
Oh, I'm so
Mhm.
sorry. How did that make you feel, like, with your addiction and everything? Was that difficult?
Oh yeah.
So that's one of the things that we're going to be talking about today. So our agenda today is talking about triggers. Triggers are very important. It's something that can be felt inwardly and sometimes outward. It can be something that we see, smell, hear. And so that's what we're going to be doing, is just, kind of talking about it. I want you guys to remember that everything in here is confidential, so nothing leaves this room. Everybody's in agreement of that, right? Okay. So I want to make sure that you feel open and honest, because this is important to be honest about what's going on with you, because that helps you grow and it helps you, in your recovery. So I'm going to give you each a paper.
Thank you.
And we're going to just use this to help us discuss this. And it's talking about triggers are people, places, and objects and feelings and times that cause cravings. For example, if every Friday night someone cashes a paycheck, goes out with friends, and uses stimulants, the triggers might be, what are some of what Friday night? What else do you see? What after work? Money, friends who use, and a bar or club. So your brain associates the triggers with the substance use. As a result of constant triggering and using, one trigger can cause you to move towards substance use. The trigger or thought craving use cycle feels overwhelming. So first you're triggered, and then you have that thought, and then that leads to craving, and then that ultimately goes to using. And this is what we want to work on stopping. But we can't really stop the cravings, because we have to become aware of what triggers are. And if we don't know what the triggers are, or not aware of what it could be, then it makes it more difficult when you're triggered to stop that thought. So this is where we're going to start, and then we're going to, in future sessions, we are going to kind of go through the cycle, so we can effectively, like, you guys hopefully will gain some knowledge and some insight for yourselves. So it says stopping the craving process is an important part of treatment. And the best way to do that is to do the following. So identify triggers. So let's talk about identifying triggers. Adriana, is there anything this week that you feel like has triggered
My cold.
your cold? How does that trigger your cold?
Well, my mom used to give me rum when I was younger for my cold, so it can like leave earlier, whatever. So I wanted to go and take a shot, a tube of rum,
Okay.
but I knew it was for something good, but I was scared that it would like trap me back.
So did you take
No.
the shot of rum?
No.
So okay. So you were aware. Were you aware that that was actually triggering that?
Well,
or-
when I wanted to do it, I realized that it was not the right thing to do.
So moving forward, that's something that you can recognize that, okay, when I have a cold, that's it. It brought back a memory.
Yeah.
And then that's kind of what this is it starts a craving. Your brain is triggered by the memory.
Yes.
So, good. I mean, I'm glad that you were very much aware of it and didn't move forward. How about you, Rachel?
For me, I found like going out to eat can be really hard because in the past, like a lot of people I go out to eat with, like even my family members, we always get drinks while we're out. And so we were at a restaurant, and it was like really a struggle because some of my family members were getting drinks, and
So, were you able to say anything to them, or were they aware?
well, they were aware, so I just didn't order a drink. But I could see if I was with friends, I definitely would feel much more inclined to.
So, just being in the restaurant
Sorry.
was a trigger for you.
Yeah, it's kind of like going out to like the bar. I mean, it's a little different, but it's just like being out.
Because you saw the alcohol. Was it
Yeah.
seeing the alcohol, or just?
Seeing it on the menu, like seeing a drink menu.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good that you were, it's important to be aware of that. So moving forward, maybe there's something that you can do, and that's what we're going to be talking about. So we're going to be using these scenarios of what you're being triggered by, and I will be giving you some homework. How about you, Katie?
We went on a trip to the beach, and the beach is always a big trigger because every time I used to go to the beach, I'd pack a big cooler and go down at like 10 a.m. and drink all day long. So that was really hard.
So was there anybody else that was doing that, or was it just like the memory of it?
Just the memory of it. They would have they might make my sister-in-law and mom made like a drink to go take down to the beach, but they didn't like pack a cooler or anything, which is what I would have done.
So were you aware that how that felt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because that's what's really important is the feeling. Like, what does that feel like when you're triggered like that? What is that thought? What is that feeling inside? Does it bring you anxiety, or does it cause that that craving? Because that can also, you can feel it physically. And so those are things that we're going to work on recognizing. So to prevent exposure to triggers, we want to prevent exposure to triggers whenever possible. So, for example, do not handle large amounts of cash. So preventing exposure, what is something that you could do, Eldriana, about the cold?
Well, I don't have rum at home, so that was helpful.
Okay.
So, because I didn't have it home, and I don't have money to spend on that.
Okay.
I was able to not have a shot of it. So, so for me to prevent is not having any around me.
Good. How about you, Rachel?
I think it's hard. I think it has a lot to do with the people that I'm with.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
if I'm with somebody who knows, then I know that I would feel too embarrassed to order a drink with them there. So just, I guess, always having somebody with me who I guess can kind of hold me accountable.
Maybe surrounding yourself with more positive people than somebody that you used to drink with.
Yeah.
So if you were with somebody that you used to drink with, would that be easier to
It
maybe
would
take
be,
that drink?
yeah, I it definitely is harder if I go out with people who I used to go out with.
Okay, good. Okay, Katie.
I'm just still at a point where I just can't do some things still because it's just too hard to not. So like big social activities, like going to the beach with a group of people or going to like a soccer game with a whole group of people. Those would be instances where I would drink from start to finish.
So preventing like not going to the beach, but you went and you recognized that you were, but you didn't take the cooler down.
Right.
So
and that's
that
because I was
good.
with my family.
So you,
If I was with my friends, it'd be a different story.
Okay.
So.
But that's good to recognize. So staying away from those things. Good. So then we want to cope with triggers differently than in the past. For example, schedule an exercise in a 12-step or mutual help meeting for Friday nights. So there are things that you could do to cope with them. Like, for instance, and y'all kind of came up with that, the preventative measures that you use. I feel like, using different coping strategies. Maybe, Eldrona, I don't know, would a different coping strategy for you be something like to change maybe some hot tea and some honey?
But I don't feel like it works. I don't think that if I only drink like hot tea, it's gonna help me with my cold. So for me, my way to cope with it, it was just like not taking anything, any drugs, anything that will help me to pass my cold, and just maybe use a more healthy or natural
Right. Okay.
stuff. So that would be my way.
That's a good.
coping.
Okay. How about you, Rachel? With something you kind of said, I heard you were saying that you're preventing like not going out with other people, like who you surround yourself with. Would that be more like a coping strategy for you too?
Yeah, and I think even just thinking ahead, like knowing what I'm getting into, like knowing if we're gonna go out to eat, that will be, I guess, even just knowing ahead of time. Yeah.
Right. Okay. How about you, Katie?
Like I said, I'm just still in a point where I just can't do anything with them
Okay.
because I know I will drink. So I'm just still trying to just avoid the whole situation at this
Yeah.
point.
So you're doing more avoiding.
Yeah.
And right now that's good. That's a coping strategy. Avoiding. You're avoiding in a healthy way, not a negative way.
Right.
You know,
So I'm just not ready
not
to
unhealthy.
to be at that point where I can realize it and yet still stay away from it.
Yeah.
So
That's great. That's great. Good. So remember, triggers affect your brain and cause cravings. Even though you have decided to stop substance use, your intentions to stop must translate into behavior changes, which keep you away from possible triggers. So we talked about some triggers that y'all went through. So I'm going to give you guys some homework to do for our next session. I would like for you to, for the next week, to write down when you're triggered and you have that craving. I want you to write down what that trigger is and how that felt. Okay. So does everybody agree to do that? And I will see you guys next week. And did everybody feel like they got something from today? Okay. Can you give me like one takeaway from today?
It's hard for me to do it because right now I'm not really mentally here.
Okay.
So I heard everything, but I cannot.
Feel
I
like
didn't process it yet.
Okay. Okay. All right. How about you, Rachel?
I guess I'm gonna think more about the people that I'm surrounded by.
Good. Good. How about you, Katie?
mine's just that even though I'm not as like far along in this process as say like Rachel is, that there is like a path for me to go down.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, that even though I'm not like fully in charge or control right now, that I someday can be.
Right. Well, I'm really proud of you guys for sharing and really being open. And so I appreciate it, and I'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. So that. Oh.